Somewhere in France, about 30,000 years ago, a man died. We don't know his name. We don't know what killed him, but we know exactly what happened next because we found him. And what the people around him did to his body tells us something about ourselves that we've never fully come to terms with. Most people think burial is natural, that grieving is instinct, that of course humans have always treated their dead with care and ceremony. But the full picture is far stranger, far darker, and in some ways, far more beautiful than that comfortable assumption allows. The oldest confirmed human burial on record is roughly 130,000 years old. It was found in a cave in Israel called Kafse. Inside, scientists found the skeleton of a young woman deliberately placed in a pit, her knees drawn up to her chest, her body arranged with care. Near her hands, stained with red ochre, were the antlers of a deer. Someone put them there. Someone chose them. That means 130,000 years ago, before writing, before cities, before anything we'd recognize as civilization, a human being looked at a dead body and decided it mattered. But here's something nobody talk about. That same cave contains evidence that not everybody got that treatment. Some were just left. For most of human prehistory, burial was not the default. It was the exception. The vast majority of early human remains show no signs of deliberate placement, no grave goods, no ochre, no ritual. They were simply abandoned where they fell or left for scavengers. And this wasn't neglect. This was normal. Every other animal on the planet does the same thing. When something dies, the ecosystem absorbs it. Wolves don't bury their dead. Elephants are famous for returning to the bones of their family members, touching them with their trunks, standing quietly. But they don't dig graves. We do. And the question that keeps archaeologists up at night is why? When did it start? And what does it mean that it started at all? The site that changed everything was found in South Africa in 2015, deep inside a cave system called Rising Star, so deep that the excavation team had to crawl through passages barely wide enough for a human body. Researchers found something impossible. 15 individuals of a species called Homo naledi, an ancient relative of ours with a brain roughly a third the size of yours. Too small, most scientists assumed, for complex ritual behavior. Too primitive for symbolic thought. But the bodies hadn't washed in. There was no evidence of predator activity. The only way those bodies got to that chamber was if someone carried them there, deliberately, through passages so narrow it required effort, planning, and intention. Homo naledi had a brain the size of an orange, and it was burying its dead. This broke the model. Scientists had assumed that burial required language, abstract thought, a theory of mind sophisticated enough to understand that death is permanent, and that the dead person once had an inner light. But here was a species that couldn't have had any of that, doing something that looks unmistakably like what we do, which means the impulse might be older than thought itself. But early humans didn't just bury their dead. Some of them ate them. In a cave in England called Goff's Cave, researchers found human bones from about 14,700 years ago. The skulls had been carefully cleaned with stone tools. The long bones cracked open the same way you'd crack open an animal bone for the marrow. And here's the part that doesn't fit the starvation theory. The same cave contains bones from horses, deer, and other animals. There was plenty of food. The humans weren't a last resort. A 2017 study found that a human body yields roughly 125,000 calories. A single bison yields 600,000. Humans are inefficient food. They were a choice. And one forearm bone found in that cave was carved with a zigzag pattern after the meat had already been removed. This wasn't desperation. This was ceremony. Similar sites have been found across Europe, France, Germany, Spain, Croatia. For hundreds of thousands of years, in different places, different groups of humans were doing this to each other. Not always to survive, because somewhere along the way, we decided that consuming the dead meant something. Absorbing their strength, honoring them, keeping them with you in the most literal sense imaginable. We don't fully understand it. We may never fully understand it. But it was real and it was widespread, and the people doing it were not monsters. They were us. Then something shifted. Around 100,000 years ago, the archaeological record starts filling up with graves. Real graves, intentional graves, graves with objects. A child buried with a mammoth tusk in Russia. An elderly man in Iraq surrounded by flowers, the pollen still preserved in the soil after 60,000 years. A teenager in Italy laid to rest with 3 pierced shells near her head, placed there by someone who thought she might need them wherever she was going. That last detail is the one that stops you cold. Grave goods only make sense if you believe the dead person is going somewhere. If you think death is a transition and not an ending. That shell necklace is the first evidence we have of humans believing in something after death. It predates every religion ever written down by tens of thousands of years. It is the oldest spiritual act we have ever found. A stranger, 40,000 years ago, crouching in the dirt, placing a necklace next to a dead girl, believing it would matter. And it does matter, because that instinct, that refusal to accept that death is simply the end, is the engine behind almost everything humans have ever built. The pyramids, the Taj Mahal, every headstone in every cemetery on earth, every prayer ever spoken over a body, every candle lit in a dark room for someone who isn't there anymore. It all traces back to that cave, that shell, that someone who couldn't let go. Modern science has a clinical explanation for all of this. Grief is adaptive. Ritual helps communities process loss and maintain social cohesion. Burial prevents disease. Grave goods signal social status. All true, all probably part part of the story, but none of it explains the flowers. Nobody told that person in Iraq to put flowers on the grave. No survival advantage comes from gathering blossoms and laying them around a body in a cave. It served no practical function. It was purely, entirely an act of love, which means that 60,000 years before writing, before philosophy, before any organized system of belief, a human being stood over someone they had lost and wanted that person to have something beautiful. We love to think of ourselves as the first civilized generation, the first people sophisticated enough to treat death with dignity. But the evidence says otherwise. It says that the impulse to honor the dead, to grieve, to believe that something continues, is not something we invented. It's something we inherited from people who had no language for what they felt, but felt it anyway, so deeply that they carried their dead through narrow stone passages in the dark, just to give them somewhere to rest. You will die. Everyone you love will die. And when they do, someone will probably do something for your body that serves no practical purpose at all. They'll do it anyway, because that's what we've always done.